Mr. El Aynaoui, thank you very much for joining us in Palermo for the Meadow Talks and for this convening of the very prestigious international board in Palermo in Sicily. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time to talk to us for Meadow Talks as well. I wanted to kick off the discussion by asking a little bit about the role of academia in shaping public policy. A lot of the discussions we've had over the last couple of days have been very solution-oriented on how we need to come together and how we need to shape these policies and the aligned messages that we need to have as regional blocs. And I just wanted to have you expand a little bit more on the role of academia, think tanks, and this world in defining and shaping public policy.
Well, thank you for having me. Indeed, it's a question, particularly for applied science. I think in social sciences in general, and I include, maybe I exclude economics, we were a bit behind hard sciences that have always had deep relations with companies for innovation and research, like in technology, computer science, chemicals, so on and so forth. Of course, there's lots of human behavior, so it's more difficult, but still I think we need to be useful to society and try to inform policy. So there's a long tradition in economics particularly to assess the impact of reforms. Let's say you eliminate a subsidy, how it affects various components of society. Is it fair, unfair? And in the end, all social sciences have tried to understand the same things, and it's always about how we live together in society, or who gains, who loses, and I think it's not natural for those sciences to be sort of useful for policymakers. The time of research is a sort of medium to long run. Politics is in the short run. So this is why we need something to decode a little bit, decode, and make it digestible for policymakers. This is why think tanks have emerged. And it's one of the mission of MEDOR, actually, I think, to sort of bridge. So you could see this as a space for discussion, a space to share the results of research that is science-based and how to inform public policy. And so I think in most countries it's a bit suboptimal. Some countries, ministries, departments have internalized this function, but in the end they end up to be also under short-term pressure. So this is why you need sort of an institution that is external to it, but that understand public policy making and its constraints. So it takes very special skills to do that. So people that have a combination of academia, very strong backgrounds, but as well an experience in public policy, or you put them together. You can find this in one person, but you also could find it when you create a team, in fact. And that's at the Policy Center for the New South and the Mohammed VI Polytechnic University we've created in Morocco. That's really the notion that it's at the heart of, of the purpose, if you want, of sort of informing public policy, as well being useful in society, bridging science and public policy, but also research for companies and innovation in the society, while being inclusive as well. So you could see this as public goods, as commons that are here to improve the welfare at large of the society of Morocco as a nation.
Thank you. I think that's a really, really valuable point, especially as we enter and continue to exist in a world of disinformation and where there is a lot of conflicting data, there's a lot of conflicting narratives, there's a lot of manipulation from adversaries and campaigns that sort of work to fight against science and what the data is actually showing us.
That's true, and science itself has not been immune to ideology. And you have some think tanks that are for instance, that are not neutral. They have very strong political stance, but they declare it, so you know it. And but that's true, and that's very valuable, in fact, to have an institution where you can create a space to have these discussions, which is, we see unfolding under our eyes, more and more difficult just to exchange rational arguments and discussions and facts, and and that's been questioned indeed. And I think this is maybe the beginning of it. That makes it difficult for academia actually to be in this debate, but at the same time, academia has to be in society. It's not sort of a closed word where you retract yourself. And and don't forget, I mean, one of the mission of those institutions is to transmit for the next generation. So we may see short-term fluctuations and agitations, but it's important that we also think medium to long run. So I think that's essential.
Absolutely. And I really liked your point earlier as well about the need for the application of these ideas into policy as well, because I've seen so many examples where, governments will silo the policy side of their teams and the communication side of their teams. And when it comes to academia informing public policy, it feels very crucial that there is an ability to translate the data and the analysis into very tangible and clear policy recommendations so that there is no miscommunication in that process.
Yeah, I mean, every minister that does a reform wants it to be successful. So when you are, you have a sort of, you're showing that it didn't work, etc. Public policies is like, have many unintended consequences, and hell is paved with good intention, and there's a long list of public policies measures that have good intentions, but in the end they have bad consequences. Particularly when you put subsidies, you change the behavior, and this subsidy can be captured by a group of people. You call this rents, or an excessive consumption of a service that create rationing for others. So there are but there's a whole lot of science, and we know many things, but for it to be sort of absorbed in the political cycle, it's tough, because it's not always what you want to hear. It takes time. It's difficult to explain. Governments are elected for 5 years. That's where I think a country like Morocco, where we have a king with the view with the long run, we have stability in our option, is essential. So every country needs to find its arrangement to sort of balance the democratic aspiration of and the freedom of their population, but as well as having some stable choices on the long run. So that's the social fabric of a nation, and it's very complex to articulate. And I think in Morocco we have a solution that works. Some other countries have as well, but I see the sort of attacks against democracy that we're seeing as a new fragility of that sort of medium to long run consensus you need in nations. Like, we want quality education. Everybody agrees with that. We want decent housing for everybody. We want good health services. There's no one against that across the political spectrum in any nation. But still, how you make sure that is delivered and that is sort of partially immune from the political cycle is difficult, and it's very sensitive, very fragile in any nation. So it's a sort of secret formula that is in the DNA of nations, and that's not easy to reach.
Absolutely. And I think Morocco has this very proven commitment to it, right? It feels very much like a legacy as well, that
Yeah.
there is a strong, consistent commitment
Yeah, I
to
think
this.
it's continuity because
Yeah.
these are difficult. It's difficult
Yeah.
to achieve or to deliver the services I just mentioned.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and often actually we underestimate the difficulties of public policies, and it's a first mistake that starts from here. Oh well, we will do this. It's easy, etc. No, it's not easy. When you say it's difficult, then you're more cautious. So
Yes.
that's a bit the role of institutions like think tanks, academia, but also. As well as MEDOR, for instance,
Yeah.
and creating also spaces to understand others and to listen. So across nations,
Yes.
like MEDOR is trying to do,
Yeah.
but also within a society as well. I think it's essential that's part of the vitality of a society to have this kind of institution where there is space for discussion, where you take time to think through tough reforms, and where you have all stakeholders, and in particularly, academia and then science.
Yeah, and I think that's what's been really interesting as well about the group of people that's here in Palermo and the convening power that MEDOR is bringing together here is that we have, yes, voices and perspectives from 29 countries, but also from different backgrounds, and this allows and fosters a conversation that is much more productive and I think insightful for other people to learn as well from other countries, so that we can take good examples of initiatives, of approaches that worked. And obviously, what's going to work in one country is not always going to work in another, but there are lessons that can be learned,
of course,
for efficiency
and understand each other's as well.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said earlier on, every nation has its character, its soul, and that's why we try to convey to students as well. Is that, like, if you look, let's say, at the Atlantic, you don't see it in a way from Morocco or Brazil or North America, as in, let's say, Argentina. So you need to understand that, and that's essential in a sort of the world we live in. And the earlier you understand that, if you didn't have the chance to travel with your family, is to embed this in education. And I think that or Asia, how China sees the world. It's essential for let's say a young Moroccan or a young European to understand how China views the world, what is its culture, etc. And the earlier we start, I think that the better, I would say. And so then you at the academic level in your higher studies, even in high school, but it continues with why we're here. In fact, that's a continuation. For maybe our generation, it's through work that we discovered that, but we were frankly not exposed to it when I was in high school or even at the universities in the 80s, so early 90s. So I think that's essential that we go at this level of details in the curricula. We think that so, and that's how also you pacify nations, I think, and you have channels of discussions in the future as this generation gets in positions and then have their professional careers. Absolutely.
The more exposure fosters understanding, fosters tolerance.
Yeah. You could see academia as an engine to generate knowledge. And this knowledge you can share in various ways. Of course, they publish in academic journals, but it's for their peers. But then you can have you do conferences to share that knowledge. You have training for professionals through executive education. You can see it as well as being in the public debate by simplifying the results and making digestible. You can have advisory work for governments. You can organize workshops, expert meetings with public policymakers, closed door.
Yeah.
You can do podcasts. You can do all kind of things.
Yeah.
In the end,
Yeah.
at the heart of it it's that knowledge. That is generated by researcher. You can contract this out in a bilateral relation when a company asks, for in medicine, in pharmaceutical, joint, contracting research with universities. So all kind of formats. Some countries are better at doing that.
Yes,
I think the US is, the example. China is emulating that example with funding mechanisms and and attracting the best talents of the world. So in the end, it boils down to ideas.
Yeah.
So like MEDOR, the Policy Center for the New South, the Mohammed VI Polytechnic University, where I work as well. In the end, to simplify it, it's the business of ideas.
Yeah.
Good ideas. And good ideas, they don't come from a researcher isolated alone in laboratory. This is teamwork. This is intense exchange and back and forth within your institution, but with many other institutions. This is why for me, I'm really glad to have been invited to join the board of MEDOR Italian Foundation, because I learned a lot. It's a fantastic group of professionals, of people that are committed, serious, and this is valuable. So for 2-3 days here, I come back with lots of ideas, and of course contacts for new professors. I've already had discussions. People will come and do conferences, student exchanges for our students. So it's fruitful, and I hope I was also myself useful to, contributing to the discussion with other colleagues from the board and the participants in the conference.
Yeah, no, I've been very delighted to see how much over the last couple of days we've all gotten to know each other, both on the formal setting and these very insightful panels, but also just to be able to socialize and hear a little bit more about each other's countries. And you mentioned student exchange programs, and I've always been just a massive advocate for that, because every time I have ever studied in different institutions or had global citizens in the institutions that I've been at, it's just the most fundamental level of understanding, and the fosters such a positive side of globalism and helps these citizens understand different cultures, different institutions.
But you see, it takes state-owned enterprises, because MEDOR is supported by state-owned enterprise, so it's taxpayer money in the end, to create certain institution. And the parallel with the two institutions where I work in Morocco were created with the spirit of public good for Morocco by a phosphate company, which is a state-owned enterprise, and that through its foundation that has created this institution in the spirit of the social license to operate it has for Moroccan phosphates, and to, of course, pay dividends to the Ministry of Finance, but we reinvest part of this dividend in a public good, which is a university, a think tank, and it does many, many other things. So in terms of spirit, it's very similar. Here, MEDOR, you could see it as a public good for Italians, and for Italians to connect with the rest of the world. So I think that there's an alignment of spirit, and if we all had this kind of institution in every single countries of the world, it could create a very interesting sort of platform for discussion. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.